It's finally Friday. It's Friday, Friday.
Thank God it's
All right, welcome back to the Friday Show, presented by Woodbine's Twilight Racing Series. I'm Scott Jagow, along with Ray Paulick. We're glad you can be with us. Well, we've reached the middle of the year, and we're getting ready for Del Mar and Saratoga. It's kind of a quiet time on the racing scene, maybe a time for reflection. What do you think? So today, we're going to talk about the 5 biggest challenges facing North American racing right now. Let's just get right into it. Number 1, I'm going to say, is the culture of potential cheating, both the overuse of therapeutic medications, which is one part, and then there's the doping that's going on that's not being caught. So where do you come down on that, Ray?
I think there's been a lot of progress made on the therapeutic medication front thanks to the National Uniform Medication Program, the Racing Medication and Testing Consortium, and the study in New York that was done a few years ago that looked at the number of breakdowns in aqueduct. From that standpoint, it's better. From the standpoint of the real bad drugs, the performance-enhancing drugs, the undetectables, we need better out-of-competition testing. We need more coordination among the labs, among the state racing commissions, and better security, I think, too.
Yeah, eyes peeled, boots on the ground, people keeping watch over what's going on so that we can get reports, because that's mainly how people get caught. And while these things are undetectable or detectable in a very short window, I can detect them on the racetrack by the performances that I see when a mediocre horse wins a grade 1 or grade 2 race by 8 lengths over a field that is very competitive with that horse, and the horse re-rallies in the middle of the stretch. Come on, we know what's going on there. And back to the therapeutics, though, still, Lasix, there's an indefensible defense of Lasix which needs to be fixed because the rest of the world doesn't use it, and there is a reason for that, and that is also wrapped up into this problem. Let's move on to number 2, which is the cohesiveness, and on the opposite side, the infighting that goes on. We've got all these different organizations, all these different interests, all these different jurisdictions, and often when it comes down to it, their answer for resolving problems is to go to fighting with each other, which makes no sense to me when the sport has all these issues.
Yeah, horse racing reminds me of the 405 freeway in Los Angeles without any traffic lanes. Like, everybody just drive, just whatever direction you want to. It is crazy. There's no national authority for our sport. Not that we're ever going to have one, but even regional cooperation is really woefully lacking. Let's just look at one thing. Suffolk Downs is going to have some racing. Monmouth Park told their horsemen, if you ship to Suffolk Downs, you can't come back. Now, the horses at Suffolk Downs have got to come from somewhere. I understand there's horse shortages everywhere now, but that kind of bullying does no good for anyone.
And, how many days a year is Suffolk Downs running now? Hardly any. Owners and trainers need places to run their horses. It just makes no sense to take that negative attitude, use that energy in that way, instead of trying to come to solutions like coordinating post time so that bettors can bet on your race and the other track's race so that everyone is happier. We all like to be a little bit happier in this game, but there's so much negative energy when people, they lash out. That's their first thing. They get so defensive. So stop it. Let's move on. Number 3, the shortage of horses that you just mentioned, and something you've talked about previously, the shortage of owners.
I think we can have enough horses if we can get more owners. I don't think horses is the problem. It's owners of those horses. And all of these other problems that we're talking about contribute to the shortage of owners. The infighting, the getting beat by a 50% winning trainer who is not following the rules. And owners get discouraged and they get out of the game. We need owners. They're a partner in the game. They need to have a better experience when they go to the racetrack. Uh, they need to be treated more fairly by bloodstock agents, by their trainers. A lot of people in the business look at owners kind of like fresh meat when they get in the business. Here's a new sucker. Well, we got to get away from that, because we need owners to stay in the business for a long time.
Yeah, that's so frustrating when an owner gets in and they try to take advantage of him instead of supporting him. And I know there are a
Right.
lot of good people in the business who take the opposite approach. It's just, we know that stuff goes on. Let's move on to number 4, which is related to wagering competition. Now, this has been going on for decades. The lottery, came out in the 60s. And then the casinos proliferated, and other forms of entertainment. So horse racing is continually finding itself up against other forms of entertainment. But, it could get worse. If sports gambling, gambling on football, for example, is allowed online or in more states than Las Vegas, that could be a real problem.
Yeah, I think the immediate impact of daily fantasy sports, FanDuel and DraftKings, was felt in horse racing. There were a lot of young people that could have been potential horse racing fans, loved it. The data's there, easy to sign up and all that stuff. So, there's definitely competition. But the other thing about all these other forms of gambling is some of these forms of gambling are currently our friend. There are casinos at racetracks, slot machines at racetracks, and tracks have got to use that revenue to help build the core product. And I don't see enough of that happening at tracks that are currently benefiting from gaming revenue from slots or casinos.
I would say that at most of these places, slots and other forms of casino gambling are a Trojan horse. And looking back, there are exceptions. We have done stories from Indiana Grand where they are genuinely interested in the racing product, and they are investing in it millions of dollars each year to make it better, and it is tangible. Go there if you haven't been there, and you'll see what I'm talking about. So there are examples that we can point to and go, that's positive. So let's have more of that instead of the casino companies where they're taking all the profits and leaving racing to die. So all right, number 5, challenge number 5. You want to go with this one?
Well, it's converting the casual fan into a horse player, and that's a tough one. It's a complicated mental challenge to handicap a horse race. I wish someone could come up with an easier way to evaluate a horse race. People have been trying to do this for years, and I don't think anybody's come up with the right solution yet. There are 2 other things that I think are a real serious challenge. One is the cost of the data. You go to a racetrack, you have to buy past performances. You have to either buy a program, buy a daily racing form, go online and buy stuff. Data is free in daily fantasy sports. Rich data is free. And the beauty of horse racing is it owns its data. The Equibase is owned by the Jockey Club and all the racetracks combined that are members of the TRA. They own this data, and yet they look at it instead of as a tool to build a fan base, they look at it as a profit stream. And that's wrong. The other thing, ADW companies currently have a real hard time because most credit card companies will not allow their credit cards to be used to fund an ADW account. It's legal, but they're not doing it. And that's something that the ADW companies, the NTRA, they really have to work on getting this approved because it's a real hindrance to signing up new people.
Exactly. And fantasy sports isn't considered gambling, which is ludicrous. But they can take somebody's credit card or debit card. And the banks will allow that because it's not considered gambling technically by the law, which probably will hopefully be fixed in the near future. But back to what you were saying about getting people into the game. There are some things like exchange wagering, which has come along and is only being operated in one state right now. That could be a gateway for people that like a different way of looking at that's a different way of looking at horse races. I mean, you can bet in the middle of the race, that kind of thing. So that's one place where we have not jumped on that bandwagon. And in Great Britain, it's hugely popular. And the other one is something like show wagering, the simplest form of wagering, and tracks take that away, or ADWs take that away when there's a heavy favorite that new casual fans would want to bet on, want to cash a ticket. That's the easiest way to cash a ticket, and a lot of times it's not available. Okay, it's your turn now. Let us know what you think of the 5 things we've talked about here on the show. What do you think is the most critical, the one that is at the top of the priority list? Let us know with the poll on our website, paulickreport.com. That's going to do it for this edition of the Friday Show, presented by Woodbine's Twilight Racing Series. Thanks so much for joining us, and we'll see you next time.